joining us, because end of day 2. Yeah, thanks for sticking with us. Woo! End of day 2. Because, of course, yeah, it's pretty, thanks for not going for beers yet.
So, I'm Mark Simos, lead cybersecurity at Microsoft, lead cybersecurity architect. Sarah?
I'm Sarah Young. I'm a cloud security advocate. You may also remember me from the person who's been reading tweets for the last 2 days on the live stream. If you've been watching that at all, hello.
So today we're going to be talking about making end-to-end security real. By the way, I'm also the author of a Zero Trust Playbook there, and there's a 20% discount code if anyone is interested. So publisher was kind enough to share that. So today we're going to be talking about end-to-end security. How do we make it real? We're going to start with having a little bit of fun with the Spoonie Gang. It kind of started with a casino heist and a gang that decided to go into cybercrime instead of holding up casinos. So we'll be starting there. Then we'll be talking about end-to-end security, zero trust principles, how that makes it real. And then the big focus on this is the top security controls for each area of security, because security is a very complex space. So we wanted to boil it down to, if you're doing anything, please do these things first, type of recommendation. So think top 10 list type of thing. So that's where that is. And then we do have, how many folks here have heard of the Microsoft Cybersecurity Reference Architecture? About half the folks in the room, okay. Well, there's a new version of that is coming out very, very soon. So that is coming, and so we'll show you a preview of that. And of course, key takeaways.
Of course.
All right. So we're going to be talking about the Spoonie Gang. That may rhyme with a famous actor, but it is not a direct reference to them, just for the record. So when the Spoonie Gang does their cybercrime, it's just like they're doing a physical casino heist or any other type of crime. They start with the end in mind. They know how they're going to make money. They're either going to be doing ransomware, they're going to be doing destruction, which doesn't bring in a lot of money unless they're paid to do that by someone, or they're going to be stealing data that they can then resell or reuse to do other attacks against that organization or somewhere else. So this is how cyber criminals think. They always have a way of making money. They're not doing this for the fun of it. They're not doing it to accomplish anything other than make a money or mission thing happen. Then they have to figure out how to get in. So, similar to when they were breaking into the casinos, they have to figure out how to get in. There are only a couple of different ways for this to be done. There's a lot of variation of these, but fundamentally they either get someone's credentials, just like stealing an employee's badge. They're going to send a phishing email to trick someone into clicking on something. They're going to attack some externally exposed API, website, or application, or they're going to go after one of those IoT devices. True story on this one, actually it happened to a casino. They lost their high roller database because of an unsecured IoT device, a fish tank thermometer, in fact, that was vulnerable. It got compromised, and then the attackers used that, because it was connected to the corporate network, as a base of operations, ran their malware on it, did their attacks, etc., and then they pulled that high roller database out through that very same fish tank thermometer. So IoT devices are a real thing. They don't happen all the time, but that is a valid piece. So couldn't resist that story because it was also a casino heist. Then once they have that way in, they've gotten in through the door, they've got to get to the objective that they identified earlier, so they have to traverse around. Sometimes they can start right away because they already have an identity. Attacker's not breaking in, they're logging in. Or more commonly, if they can't get that right away, they take over the machine. As soon as you own a machine, you own every credential on that machine. Anybody that logs in, you've got the keystrokes. Anything else that happens, the processes, also come automatically. And then traverse around, essentially going room to room within the organization until they get to the things that they need to do their heist. So that is how the Spoonie Gang is planning their attack. Anything to add?
Yeah, so what I want to add is that, remember, these folks, the Spoonie Gang, are not particularly proud or, proud of their craft. They are going to get in any way that you let them. So we say this time and time again, but security hygiene is so important. And we're going to talk about these best practices, but it's great focusing on the new shiny things that we talk about all the time, but the fact is that the Spoonie Gang is looking for your low-hanging fruit, the easy things. It's all great talking about ML and AI and machine learning and all of these things, but if you're not patching and you're way behind on your patching and there's something they can exploit, that's what they're going to go for.
Yeah, an ugly win is still a win to them. If you have a bad day at work and you still get your paycheck, are you still pretty happy? Same thing for them. This is their day job. Now, getting a little bit more serious on the Spoonie Gang for a moment. These are actual snippets we got off of the internet from actual negotiations. These attackers in the real world are ruthless criminals. They are brutal. They don't care. They target hospitals on purpose. They often, they're very sophisticated in how they actually look at how much money you have. They look at your bank statements. They look at your revenue run rate, and they price accordingly because they know you have that much cash on hand. Sometimes they get it wrong, like they went after a public school system and they used the entire budget of the county to figure it out, and so it was way off. But for the most part, they are very brutal. They don't care who it hurts. They will retaliate. If you haven't cleaned them out and you decide to take an attitude with them, they will wipe your stuff just to prove that they're serious so that the next victims pay. Once you pay, you're marked as someone who pays, so you're targeted even more, and you've given them money to buy 0 days and other things to attack you. So the real world, very, very ugly. We do have a lot of guidance at that AKMS human-operated resource there on whether, when to pay. Generally, don't unless you have absolutely no other choice. Never plan to pay, but also what order to do the recovery in, the mitigation in. So what to do first to make sure this doesn't happen to you, which is also reflected in our top controls today.
All I'll do is add to that we do see, if you're a small, medium business and not a Fortune 500, there's still, I'd say, a certain level of naivete around businesses saying, well, why would someone attack me? I'm too small, I'm too insignificant. But the fact is that research is showing, all the research that we do and other organizations do shows that a lot of these bad actors are now targeting smaller organizations that don't have the same security capabilities because they know even if they can get less money from you, it's easier for them to get into you rather than a Fortune 500 that maybe has several hundred people doing security. So although they'll get smaller amounts, they can do it more regularly. So never ever think that I'm too small, I'm too insignificant, why would anyone touch me? Because the fact is that if you're on the internet, you're a potential target.
Yep, if you've got money to pay because you need to get your business online, you're a potential target. A lot of organizations are also by their business affiliations. Certain universities are hit a lot because their folks work with government agencies to help develop policy and government representatives. There's a lot of reasons why attackers attack you. You are not safe just because you are a certain industry or a certain size. So keep that in mind. So you've got to secure yourself. Security is a risk discipline. Every risk discipline is focused on a couple simple things. It's very, very simple in concept. Left of bang, right of bang. There's bad things that could happen. You want to stop them from happening. You want them to not affect you as much, so if they do happen, it doesn't hurt that bad, kind of like a bullet missing versus a bullet only grazing you. Or you deal with it when the bad thing actually happens. That's all that risk is in a nutshell. With financial risk, natural disasters, cybersecurity attacks, that's what risk is. It's about trying to stop as much of the bad stuff from happening and dealing with it when it does. That's the whole deal. NIST, the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technologies, did a phenomenal job of capturing this with the cybersecurity framework. Identify, protect, detect, respond, recover, pretty much map to that security lifecycle perfectly. And there's governance around it as well. Important thing about security to keep in mind is you will never get it perfect. It's like keeping a house clean. Do you want to live in a dirty house? Anyone? Don't see any hands. But do you like doing house cleaning? Maybe, maybe not. But it's something you've got to do no matter what, It will never be done. It will never be perfect. You just have to keep doing it to avoid the bad things from happening. Make sense? All right. So when you're doing end-to-end security, bring in the cybersecurity realm, you need to have a strategy and a program and an architecture that look at all of security. Because you saw that George has options. The Clooney gang has options, right? Sorry, didn't mean to connect those two.
No.
So they do have options, and they have a lot of different choices. Security, one of the most difficult things about it is that it's complex. And so it can be deceptive, and it can trick you a little bit. How many folks here work in identity? Okay, how many folks here work in networking? How many folks here work on endpoints? Wow, okay, so we got a lot of folks that work on a lot of things, I noticed, because the hands kept going up. Any one of those things, if you look at the world through that lens of endpoints, everything runs on endpoint. IoT, PCs, servers, you name it. Identity, it authenticates everything across it. Network, it authenticates, it rather connects and allows connectivity across everything. Those are all end-to-end disciplines, but they are not complete unless you put all of those things together. You have to have a full end-to-end view, because if you're only looking at one of those, even though it's end-to-end, you can actually have an attacker slip by and you not notice it, or you look at security operations but not the prevention side. So it's really important to look at all of security. And there's really two halves that, kind of right of bang, modern security operations. Security Operations Center, or SOC, is another name for that, but basically dealing with the bad stuff that's happened. And then on the other side of it, this is often not invested in as much lately because it's not quite a crisis situation, but you've got to have an operational function focused on prevention. And then across each of those, you've got to have technical controls that block as much as you can. Cheapest way to defend is to block something so it never happens. Does that mean you can block everything? No. You've got to be able to catch it, so you've got to detect and respond those attacks across that, whether it's an identity, whether it's a server, container, IoT device, data, you name it, you've got to have all of those things across it. Security is complex. Anything to add?
Not really there, Mark. I mean, I think you've said it pretty well. You know I'm here to do your demos. You know I'm here to do your demos.
I had to bring in someone that was technical to help me out, okay?
Yeah.
So security, strategy, and program ultimately should be following Zero Trust principles. And the way we group these initiatives up is what we see our customers actually doing, which is, hey, let's focus on identities and access. And that's all types of access, network and identity access. Infrastructure development, all those workloads that you're putting together, IoT, OT, modern security operations, data security. That tends to be how groups and professionals and careers and knowledge sets tend to group up. And so that's the modernization initiatives people take on and the ones that we recommend. Across all of these, that strategy, program, architecture needs to deliver on these Zero Trust security principles. First, assume breach. Assume the attackers will be successful at something and plan accordingly. And part of that planning is verifying explicitly and using least privilege access. So for everything you've got, whether it's a server, an API, an application, a container, a PC, a Mac, iOS device, you name it, you want to make sure that you're verifying explicitly who can take access to it, that's your attack surface, and what it can do. Because we assume breach, we assume they're going to take it over, so let's make sure that if they take over this one device, they don't get everything. And they can't ransom the whole organization because they got one PC. So those are the core Zero Trust principles, and they all need to operate under, as security needs to operate under, a very important thing, which is if you block the business from making money and doing their job, there's no point. The business has to run. It all has to be done under business enablement, and so you have to have those two, business enablement, assume breach, complement each other. Think of those things. Make balanced decisions that you don't block things, but you're keeping them secure while they're doing it. Secure productivity.
I mean, I'll just add to that, Mark, that business enablement, I think so many people, because, we're security people, and a lot of us like to be like, oh, I can't pat that when I've got a mic on, can I? So this is our job. This is like my God-given thing I must do. This is my mission to protect the business. But as Mark said, if we stop the business doing anything, you kind of you've messed up. You're not doing it right. And I think we're getting better at thinking in that way, that security is a business enabler. We're not the no people. We're not the business prevention officers. And you're not doing your job right by just saying no to everybody. But in some areas, that mindset still does proliferate, I'd say.
Yeah, especially in larger organizations where a security team that's not as well connected with IT in the business, you do see that mindset. It's very important to overcome it and remember that is a business enabler. So, Microsoft, we do make technology, and that technology enables organizations to do this modernization. Microsoft, effectively, we build technology for the security that you need, not necessarily the way it has been done in the past with firewalls and the like. And so, looking at Security Identity Access, Entra is the name of the products you're going to see in that area, and the technologies, very much supported by Intune from the management side, which also helps with some of the server, container, et cetera management. Not containers, sorry, that was a misspoke. But infrastructure and development, Defender actually goes across all those, IoT, OT, you name it. And the thing that I was really happy to see, and finally it got announced at Ignite, is the Sentinel is now feeding Defender. And so the security operations is really one console for that persona of the people that are dealing with incidents, brings all of the alerts and data from all those different sources together, including everything that feeds into Sentinel from third parties and others, into one workflow, one console for those SOC analysts. Fantastic set of things they're doing with Defender XDR there, and that covers all of those other resources. You got some controls in Azure to protect that infrastructure in OT and IoT, even building brand new secure IoT and devices, as well as securing your old brownfield devices. Data security, there's a couple different angles to that. One is your security governance lifecycle, and keeping it secure throughout the lifecycle. That's where Purview shines. And then data also has very important things to people's privacy and the people's individual rights, which is where Priva helps you manage things like GDPR reporting and forgetting people when they're requested and you legally have to do it. So that's where Priva focuses.
Before you move on, Mark,
yes.
I saw a lot of people take pictures. Good. This is by far and away, I'll have to say, the best slide I've ever seen that explains where Microsoft security products fit that is not ridiculously complicated. I mean, it's probably going to change, but take a photo. I think most people did, but keep going. Also, there are slides at the end.
Yeah, you can download these.
You can download the slides later, so you don't really need to take a photo. But I think this is very, very clear. We know things move around and change, and it can be hard to keep up. But I think this is a wonderful, nice, straightforward one. And then Mark's going to hit you at the end with the reference architecture, which if you've seen it before is a completely different beast.
And the one thing I forgot to mention, so I'm glad you stopped me, Security Copilot, which is fantastic. New technology, generative AI coming along. And the skills are still being added for each of these different areas, so it's not completely able to access everything on all these yet. Focused heavily on incident response reporting, and posture management. So lots of good things coming out where you can have an interactive conversation, and some of those generative AI functions show up as buttons or little contextual chats. So fantastic technology that is coming along to make things a lot easier so you don't have to memorize every click of every GUI, because as I said, security is complex. We do our best to simplify it, and that's going to be a huge tool in the arsenal to simplify it. So we're now going to talk about those top security controls for each initiative. There are a lot of things to do in security. And so there's a little disclaimer up there about there's a lot more controls there, especially if you're a larger organization. These are the top ones. The way we selected these, we wanted to have the most impact, right? This is going to actually do something to the attackers, frustrate them, block them, make it easier to catch them, make it cost more to attack you. But we wanted to be focused on simple implementations and low-cost stuff that doesn't necessarily require a premium license, et cetera. We wanted to make sure that these are the easiest, quickest things you can put into place. So that is the criteria for these. Your favorite control may or may not be on here, but that was the criteria we used for these selections. First and foremost, have a backup and make sure you can use it. The last thing you want to do is be in a position where you have to pay the attackers to use their tooling to restore and pay for a key, because it is the attacker tooling and their objective is to get paid by you. They don't care if you can actually restore after they get paid. So Put yourself under the control of your own tooling and a process you've tested to get back to business functionality and get your critical business up. That is the number one thing. It is partially technical of having the backups and verifying them, and it is partially process and strategy driven to actually figure out what to back up, what is business critical, and how do we make sure that this is actually up and running as a business, not just the servers running, but we need this, right? So very, very important. That is 0 because you're geeks, so we decided to do it at 0. Then along the lines here, I'm going to talk through a couple of these. And then Sarah's going to show a demo of how some of these things actually work. So secure identities and access. No surprise. You've probably heard this dozens of times. Strong authentication. Got to be phishing resistant, strong MFA, passwordless. There's a couple different variations. There's a lot of flavors and options nowadays. But making sure you have that strong authentication that it's very difficult for the attackers to get around. And then conditional access. You want to be able to make sure that your user accounts are actually, not something that we know through threat intelligence and other things are probably compromised before they get business access. We want to make sure that we have those rules and policies that go well beyond, oh, I have the password, therefore I have all your business assets. We don't want that. We want to make sure that there's a strong authentication, it's actually the user, and the device they're using isn't compromised, and various other factors. They're not logging in from across the world when they never work there and they don't have a travel budget. So we want to be able to have those policies put in place. And so that's the user part of it. And then there's a privileged access part. How much can someone do as an attacker if they get a regular user account? A lot or a little? Little. What about if they get the IT admin? A lot or a little? Can they do a lot of encryption, a lot of damage, a lot of business disruption, a lot of data theft? You've got to focus on your privileged admins, your privileged accounts, which includes your IT admins, but may also include some other people that work on business critical systems. Very, very important there. A couple of key controls: LAPS, local admin password solution, random passwords across all of your devices and servers. And with that, the attacker steals that, gets a local account database, and then it's useless against the others. If it's the same password on every single workstation, and you all know if you configured it that way, right? Because I saw a lot of hands earlier. Then they can use that local admin credential to access the other ones. So very important to have that random and managed local passwords so that the attackers that take over one machine don't get them all. Following that, Privileged Identity Management, or PIM, helps make sure that there's some controls over when you get your admin privileges. People aren't sitting around with admin rights all the time, checking email, doing other things. They only get the permissions when they ask for it, when they need it. So it's 5% of the time, 2% of the time, not 100% of the time. And there's also a record and some other things. You can have some approvals in place as well.
I'm going to do a thing now. I swear, I'm going to do some things. So let's have a look at a demo. So you can see here, I have my tenant. This is my demo tenant. It's got a great name, sarahdoesignite@outlook.com. And what I'm going to do is we're going to turn on conditional access. Now, some of you may already have conditional access. If you don't know, you do need a P1 or a P2 license to use conditional access, but we really recommend that you do have it turned on. Now, I currently don't, and you can see here, if I look in my Entra ID and the properties, down here at the bottom, it says, your organization is protected by security defaults. Now, if you don't know what security defaults are, they are when we actually put some, as it says on the tin, some defaults into your Entra tenant to give you some basic protection. So I'm going to click on this, and oh, it is enabled. Good. I was going to say it was enabled. It says your organization is currently using security defaults. Now, I'm going to turn this off, and you can see here it's going to get very angry with me, and it's going to say, are you sure? And why do you want to do this, Sarah? Now, I'm going to say, because I want to use conditional access, because we cannot use conditional access and security defaults together. This is a one that slips people up, which is why I wanted to show it. So I'm going to hit save. It's going to ask me, are you sure, Sarah? Are you really sure you want to turn this off? Because it's going to leave you vulnerable. Now, I am. I'm going to do that. And because we try and help you at Microsoft, it's going to take me immediately to conditional access because it expects me to do something. So we're going to create a new policy. Now, conditional access, essentially what it does, if you're not familiar, is we'll say if you see a certain type of login with certain properties, we will classify it high risk, medium risk, or low risk, and then you can configure it to do a thing. So it might be we want you to re-authenticate with MFA. It might be you need to, we're going to block you. What you use is going to depend a bit on your organization's security posture. But what I'm going to do is rather than create a new policy from scratch, which can be pretty confusing, in the last couple of weeks, we released this, which is create a new policy from templates. So we've got different ones in here for different things. If I click on all, I'll just show you all of them. And to start with, I'm going to do a nice, easy one, which is block legacy authentication. Now, I would hope, being that this is a brand new tenant that I am demoing, I have no legacy authentication. So, no, I did not want to go to MS Learn, but if you want to learn more, that's what you can do. So instead, what I'll be doing is clicking on here and review and create. We can change the policy name. We could put it on report only. Now, if this was a new conditional access policy that you were trialing in a production environment, I would certainly recommend you have it on report only. But because this is security, not for very long, but you do want to check you haven't broken anything. Now, I'm going to put this straight to on because I'm pretty confident I don't have legacy authentication, and we're going to click create. So you know the deal with Azure. We like to try and make things easy where we can. Don't at me on that, but where we can, we try and do that. So it's going to create my policy for me. If we have a look at my conditional access now, we will see that I have one policy here. Now, that's not very exciting. I can't really show you very much with it. But what I would definitely recommend you do here, because just blocking legacy authentication, do that, but you need to do more. Talking about the best practices Mark was talking about, we have require multi-factor authentication for admins. We also have require multi-factor authentication for all users. Now, I would recommend you should be putting that on straight away. What I will say is if I will put this on, I'm confident I will not lock myself out, is that if you are not using, that you can lock yourself out doing this, so be careful. That's why report only is your friend. And that's conditional access, nice and easy, using a template. You don't have to try and configure it yourself. I talk too much and we have a time limit, so I'm going to stop there on conditional access. But Mark, back over to you I'll go back to the slides for you, so we can talk about SecOps.
Awesome. So as we mentioned, the Spoonie gang, they were getting in mostly through identity, endpoint, and email, right? That is the front door. That is replacing what 20 years ago was the firewall, which is what everything attacked, right? But the attackers now have a different attack surface to go after, which is email, endpoint, and identity. And so the recommendations there in security operations are very, very much focused on that because you want to catch them and block them as early as possible. There are other things that you need to monitor and have detection and response for, but starting with that place gets you early. It also, especially on the endpoint piece, the attackers on an endpoint have to basically lay out their plan. If they want their code to execute, they have to load their code up into it, which gives us the opportunity to understand what they have. They're very exposed at that point, whereas an identity is sort of like a badge. You can carry it around, right? And an email is just the message in, but the endpoint, the attacker wants to put malware on there, they have to essentially put themselves at risk for detection, for being cleaned up. So very important to have those three there. Let me make sure we can click in and zoom if you, excuse me a moment here.
Go for it.
And
we have lots of buttons.
Yes, we have lots of buttons here. And so for each of these, I wanted to highlight this. I kind of skipped this the last time. You'll see each of them has a why, what, how. For these recommendations, these slides are downloadable. You're welcome to take the pictures, but you can get the actual slides themselves after the show. We have the reason why each of these, and then what we do recommend, including the name of the technology, and then the how, which is the documentation to implement it, including any products and licenses that may be required. So you can say, hey, we have this, but we don't have this, so let's start with the one we have, right? And so that's why we put that there. And then there's a few notes and assumptions about continuing to move on to detect all of the other elements as well. Sure. So do you want to show us a demo?
Yes, I do. Oh, no, SecOps, I was not going to show you a demo, Mark, because it
Oh,
was...
okay. I'm sorry, I picked the wrong one. I forgot.
It was being temperamental, demo gods.
Yes.
So, it's infrastructure and development
All
security.
right. You mind clicking me in?
I will indeed click you in, Mark.
Awesome. So in this one, we were able to actually assign a very specific order because of most organizations don't have a dedicated posture management team. Oftentimes there's a vulnerability management team, perhaps, someone that does the vulnerability scans and reports it to the teams in the hopes that they will potentially patch, maybe, someday, possibly, someone. Bueller, anyone? Sorry. So what we've learned on this, the most successful order of this, is first of all start with the tool, because we're all technologists, and having a tool that provides data allows us to build a process and understand what we're doing. So starting with tooling, and actually this one is awesome because it is free. So there is a Defender for Cloud. There's something called Foundational CSPM. It's just comes with Azure resources, and you can also use some of these capabilities across clouds as well. Fantastic stuff, and you can see, are there patching issues, configuration issues, other things there. And that gives you then the data to be able to build a process, if you don't already have one, or improve an existing process around posture management. Who does this? Who's actually doing the patching? Who fixes the configurations? Making sure that all of those elements are addressed so that we actually have something being done about it. So it's not just here's a report and then we're still just as vulnerable in 6 months or a month or 2 weeks. You're actually doing something about it. So that is a very important step, that 1B. And then there is additional capabilities that come with Defender for Cloud that allow you to then go into applications and development and DevOps and CI/CD and all of that goodness and all of those other resources that come with Azure and AI and all of the other kind of things. And so we want to have the security on those beyond that first basic part. And so that's the second step there after 1B.
So now I will show you a demo. We'll have a quick mooch around. I'm going to call it a mooch because I believe that is the correct term. It would help if I had the correct window open here. Anyone here not use Defender for Cloud? Anyone want to fess up? Oh, a couple of people.
Got a couple of hands, yep.
Couple of hands. Let's just have a quick look around Defender for Cloud if you have not seen it before. Because I think one of the best things, and this isn't new either, that we have in Defender for Cloud is our recommendations. And the recommendations now, they're not just Azure, it goes across AWS, GCP, and on-prem. And this basic version is also free, so you have no excuse not to be using it. So you can see here, our recommendations come based on best practices. They come from CIS and other standards, but you can see, enable MFA. We know this, but this is that good security hygiene. We can see here that in some of the subscriptions here, we do not all the accounts with owner permissions are MFA enabled, not great. If we have a look at applying system updates, we're not doing great here. I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm just picking them at random. But remember, if you've not read the Microsoft Digital Defense Report, we release it every year. I believe we released it last month.
Yep.
Yeah, it was last month, wasn't it? Every single year, we have a page in there that effectively says, good security hygiene will get rid of around 95% of your attacks.
I think it was the security bell curve is the graphic.
Yeah, the bell curve.
Most of the stuff can be handled by hygiene. Yep.
So although what I'm showing you here, the posture management, I know that security posture management is not as sexy and cool as some of the things that we like to talk about. But the fact is, this is really, really key and by far and away the best thing you can do to get yourself a really strong security baseline foundation. So have a look at Defender for Cloud. If you haven't before, look through these recommendations. I'd love to go into this in more detail, but we do not have time, sadly, but feel free to come chat at the end.
Yeah, it's a lot cheaper to block an attack than it is to have to do the cleanup. You do have to do a certain amount of response and cleanup, but if you can actually prevent it, life is a lot better and less painful and less expensive. Mm-hmm. And data. So data and OT and IoT are the last two we're going to cover fairly quickly. So in the data side, This is a life cycle. You got to discover what data you have, and this is a continuous life cycle because people create all sorts of new data and new things. And hey, AI is using this, and we now have Microsoft Fabric. You have all these different things you have to continuously discover, then classify it and figure out, okay, would this take the business down or not? Then apply protections, and then monitor it and make sure that someone is actually addressing these kind of things and see if it's going to unusual countries, places, et cetera, where people are using it. And so taking that, and there's some technology, it goes all the way back like 20 plus years of essentially encrypt the files in Phone Home with what used to be called Rights Management Server, then Azure Information Protection, then Microsoft Information Protection, and now it's Microsoft Purview Information Protection. And then there's some additional Microsoft Purview stuff for structured data that continues to come online. So lots of goodness there, but that life cycle is really critical to get started and start with the easiest stuff first, some great scanners and the like that you can use.
Yeah, now, sorry, go on, Mark.
I was just going to say, I was going to do IoT and OT, so we have time.
Do you want to do that first before I show you the demo?
Oh, show the demo. I'm sorry.
I have a demo, Mark. I have a demo. Okay. So now, who here, this is a very, very simple little demo that I have. Who here has used old network-based DLP? Any brand?
Oh, got some hands.
Yeah, got some hands. Like I said, I'm not picking.
Did you like it?
Yeah, did it work?
I got some thumbs downs, but no hands up.
The knowing chuckle means no, it didn't work. Now, we're not picking on any brand in particular. I know at one of my previous employers, we had something where all you had to do to get around the blocking of an email attachment was to zip it, and then you could send it out anyway. Great. Now, Purview, as Mark said, is Microsoft's data protection product, and the first time I played around with Purview, being the nature of the person that I am, I was like, it's data protection, it's data loss prevention. It won't work because my previous experience with these products, older product versions of these products, was it didn't work very well. So here I have, as you can see, a test file. You can see it's classified as highly confidential. I cannot change it. I cannot do anything to it, barely. I've been given, if you can see on the permissions, which it's currently not letting me do. You'll have to take my word for it then. If I could open that box, it would tell you that I only have read permissions and nothing more. I cannot print it. I cannot do anything to it. I cannot screenshot it. Now, as part of the preparation for this talk, I was asked to record backup demos. Now, my demos aren't super complicated today, but I did record a demo of me trying to change this file. And when I went to edit it and tidy it up to send over to the production, the whole screen was blank because I forgot that Purview protects you from screen recordings. So I actually sent Mark a 5-minute demo of a black screen. So
great voiceover, but absolutely nothing on the screen except for like one dialog box of what do you want to do?
Yeah, so as you can see, it pretty much does nothing. It really does. I've also tried, you can, with Purview, you can stop things going onto particular networks. You can stop it going onto USBs. All I'll say is I've spent a long time trying to get around it because that's my nature, and I could not. So there you go. It actually works.
Awesome. And so the last part is IoT and OT security. How many folks here have operational technology or industrial control systems in their organization? Okay, about half the room. IoT devices. IoT devices that you don't know about. All the hands, there we go. So in this case, this technology is actually one of the hardest to secure because all of these things are often purpose-built. I mean, OT can go all the way back to literally steam-powered machines that had a device attached to it to electronically control it in the 60s or 70s that then was updated to something that did IP in the 80s or 90s. So, some of this stuff is very old. The IoT devices tend to be very small in processing and memory, so you're not going to get an agent, you're not going to get the scanner, you're not going to get the normal IT controls on there. And oftentimes you're very lucky to have IP connectivity and visibility, let alone modern OAuth or SAML or OpenID kind of things. So from that perspective, you're pretty much usually relegated to network-based controls. And oftentimes these things are pretty fragile and they can break. And so in the OT space, we generally start with a passive network approach. We bought a company called CyberX 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Just before COVID, I think.
Yep,
So,
just
yeah.
before COVID, yep. Fantastic team, worked with them, great product, and it basically listens on the network and gets a whole lot of analysis out of it. The good news about those things is it's pretty predictable, and it can spot anomalies fairly easily. You just have to know those ancient protocols and the libraries there. So great technology there for that to help discover it. We've adapted it to the IoT world so it can live and learn on IT networks where your IoT devices often are, and discover off of that. It's called Enterprise IoT. And for those that do have E5, Microsoft 365 E5, they just added EOT licenses as part of that, so you can now use that to do IoT discovery. So lots of good stuff there. And then that gets you data and learning about your actual IoT and OT estate that you can use to plan and protect. As you can see, a good half of the slide is focused on all the caveats and constraints that make this hard. We just wanted to share those lessons learned because the protection part does get very, very difficult and limited, but we wanted to share the lessons learned that we have in that space with you. So there is stuff to do on that. We do discuss some in some of the videos. So are we ready to have some fun with the reference architecture?
Of course. Oh, we went past it.
It wasn't that scary. Don't touch anything. We're good? We're good.
I'm not
Yay.
touching. I'm not touching.
So this is the almost done November version of the cybersecurity reference architecture. Lots of changes on this one, but still fundamentally very similar diagram as the previous one. You'll notice that Defender XDR is now the one place where all that stuff feeds. I was really happy to figure out, it was a little bit tough, but we figured out how to make the graphics work to show that Sentinel is extremely important to bring in a lot of sources, but there is one console for those security analysts, the SOC analysts, to do their job. So that's one of the big changes. Some of the other stuff, we've got some GitHub and Copilot icons because we now have coverage for those from a DLP perspective, not ancient network DLP. Don't want to trigger Sarah. But we do have the ability to do that there. Trying to think of some of the other big things. There's definitely a bunch of name changes. We've got the Entra Permissions Management got added. There's a good 8 or 10 changes to this space. Of course, it's now called Microsoft Entra. And all the hover text and all that kind of stuff still works. Maybe hover over one if you wouldn't mind.
Anyone in particular?
Don't care.
Okay.
Hopefully it's one of the ones I did, yeah. So Azure Firewall, nice choice. And so we do have the hover text there that explains what each one is. Click on it, it takes you to the documentation site for it. So something you can explore a lot of things on your own as you go. So that is the updated cyber reference architecture. And then we also just recently released, want to go to the next slide maybe?
Yeah.
Yay. A bunch of, so the Security Adoption Framework, we just released this. So this is how we are actually in the Microsoft Unified, formerly Microsoft Premier. We're basically putting all of our planning workshops to help customers do that monetization we described. And then we have a bunch of resources that are also out there, public and available, videos, training, documentation, you name it, to help with each of these areas that go beyond those initial controls. So I think we're ready to close out.
Okay.
Cool. So key takeaways, very simple. Please get started. Anywhere, somewhere. Do something with these, please. The attackers are not stopping. They're getting better as they go. And it's a race, and we've got to do everything we can and keep going. You've got to be agile. You've got to learn. You've got to pay attention. Things are always changing. So keep doing stuff, keep going, and use these resources. We put them out there because we want people to use them. If there's something that you need that isn't there, doesn't answer a question, please send feedback. All of them have linked to basically Mark's list that I maintain. And so you can reach me there through LinkedIn or what have you. But if there's anything there that you need or that isn't there, let us know. But please use these. And any closing comments?
Yeah, I mean, as Mark said, just start. I know it can seem so overwhelming, especially if you have a lot of brownfield and a lot of tech debt, but stuff won't get better if you just leave it and try and stick your head in the sand. So, you've got to be brave, tackle it head on. I know it's very easy for me to stand up on a stage and say that because there's so many budgetary and political and, things that affect this, but, show someone the video. Mark's a great, like, Mark makes all these nice things. Like, show your management and you know, get going. Crack on, as they would say where I'm from.
Crack on. Thanks.